A goal without a plan is just a wish list. These famous words were written by a French writer in 1943, and they still ring true today. This is a time of the year where we're planning goals and setting resolutions, but unfortunately, we end up with a massive wish list too often than not that we never actually achieve. So in this video, I'm going to show you my tried and tested system for actually turning your goals into an actionable business plan coming up. I coined this methodology the Prosper Plan, and it's an actual process that we go through inside of the Business Launch community every single year. This is the exact same process that I teach inside of the Business Lounge, inside the Prosper Plan course, and of course, the system and the process that we actually guide our group coaching program clients as well as our one-on-one coaching clients, because setting an actual plan for the year is so important. So together, we're going to review what worked and what didn't in the previous year. We're going to actually set specific strategic goals, and we're going to reverse engineer the entire year from the start to the end in a really smart way. So we're going to go over to my iPad and get planning. All right, so welcome to the Prosper Plan doc, and this is a PDF version that I've imported into GoodNotes on my iPad, but you could choose to use this on your computer, on your laptop, via the doc version if you prefer to type rather than use your iPad. But you could also print it out in the PDF version, just hit print, and you could write all of it out and just go full analog, which is really great, especially if you don't want to be interrupted with a bunch of emails and social media and that kind of thing, which kind of leads me to the game plan. So Chris and I always recommend that you block out at least a full day of undisturbed planning. Now, I know that everyone is in different seasons, and so we always give the caveat, listen, if you are like a new mom, if you're switching jobs, if like us, like last year, we were moving our parents to Texas, there is a lot going on. And so we broke it down into smaller chunks throughout multiple days, and that's okay too. The idea here is that you have uninterrupted business planning time, even if that means just chunks of 20 minutes at a time. Again, just depending on your life season. So I love renting out an Airbnb for the weekend, going to a hotel, because Chris and I are business partners, of course. Like, it's great because we do our yearly planning together, but make sure that you adapt this to whatever works for your family. So if that's not possible, look, you could head out to a cafe. You could rent a co-working space for the day. You could go to the local library. There's so many different ways that you could do this, or just have someone come in, take care of the kiddos. Maybe it's like a friend or a family member, and you just go in the next room and get some planning done. The idea here is to really figure out the non-disturbed planning time and make it your own. This is a time where you want to be really engaged with your business. You want to pray ahead of time, prepare your mind, prepare the mindset, just to be really ready for downloading what the Holy Spirit has for you in this season, but also having all the creative juices flowing so it's not a stressful environment as much as possible. And again, life happens, so don't be too hard on yourself. You can go through this with us, but if you want to access this template, I'm going to leave a coupon code. It's over on our shop. There's also a course that I shot a couple years ago that walks you in depth through everything on mindset, stuff that's not even here, like, for example, marketing plans, promotional plans. There's a bunch of bonuses about leading through difficult, challenging times. And so if you want to check that out, I'm going to leave a coupon code below this video so that you can get 20% off on the shop. Okay, so this is the first part. We want to start by reviewing, right, the last year. And I think sometimes this can get a little overwhelming, but I don't want to, just do not allow the overwhelm to cloud what should be a fun and exciting situation. So you want to definitely start out with things that you are deeply thankful for. I think starting the year with gratitude makes all the difference in the world. And so you want to jot down what are some meaningful moments, milestones, or emotions that you're deeply thankful for. As you kick off the year with gratitude, I think it makes a profound impact on your mindset, and it just really helps you start the year right. Now, if you need to write more. If you need more space than this, feel free to duplicate this page or adapt it as you go in the doc, like just add more space to it if you're typing on it. And if you're printing it, you can definitely print 2 of these pages and then just start kicking this out. So I'm going to go ahead and write down a couple of the meaningful moments for us this year. So one of the main things that I'm really, really grateful for is, like I mentioned, Chris and I moved his parents over to Texas, and now we get to help them out. It's awesome to have them close and just have a great time with our family. So having family close was amazing. And these can be personal and also business things that you're grateful for. I'm also super grateful for our new coaching program. This was a year where, oh my goodness, we doubled our coaching program, one-on-one coaching, and then we launched a group coaching program. And I learned so much. It's been such an amazing blessing to see people flourish and prosper and have incredible wins. One of the big wins for the last quarter was one of our clients, she nailed a $10,000 client from her new website, and it was super awesome to see just all of the things that came about as part of that program. Another thing I'm super, super grateful for this year is our team. Oh my goodness. So our team just crushed it this year. They had so much on their plates with new programs and new initiatives, and I'm just so grateful for the work that they did. They cleared the space for me to be fully in my marketing mode, and that, oh my gosh, it took so much off my shoulders. I'm really grateful for that. So you want to just continue jotting down things you're grateful for. I'm not going to go through every single one for the sake of time, but this is a really good time to just look back, think about it. If you're a visual person, you can also, and you like using the iPad and apps like GoodNotes, you could always go in and add memories. For example, my mom, she just sent me some sticky notes. She does this every year, and all the accomplishments for the year, she for the whole family, she will add in some sticky notes, and she puts them in this super cute jar. And at the end of the year, she'll read all of them. And then she sends us pictures of the ones that are related to Chris and I, and it's so cute. So some of these are hey, we had a big win in the business, or we got to adopt a new little kitty. By the way, if you see, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but my hands are all scratched up. It's because we had a new little kitten who just showed up in our garage on Thanksgiving, and we took her in, and she's lovely, but she scratches me a lot. As those of you who have cats, you know what that's like. Okay, so now that we moved in, you could add pictures here. You could add memories, for example, of cool things. You could add, some cute Bible verses or inspirational quotes. I love having a bunch of these on my iPad that I snag from Pinterest, or that Belle on our team will create for social media. And that kind of sets the tone. So if you have extra space and you want to get creative, please feel free to do that. All right, so the next step that's really important is really just reviewing your numbers. And we talk about numbers a lot in the Business Lounge. I think it's so important, and just in all of our coaching programs, it's so important to really look at what worked and what didn't. And numbers don't lie. They give you so much insight. And some of the metrics hey, total or monthly revenue, total and monthly expenses, total profits, average monthly profits, where did the majority of your sales come from, email list growth, general audience, total traffic channels. These are just ideas of things that you can track, but every business is different. And so you want to really think about, what are some of the metrics that matter? What are some of the things that you want to measure? You might be new to this and you're I have no idea what to measure, nor do I know if I even have that data. That's totally fine. So the first thing is, you want to think about, where did sales come from, right? Hopefully you're at the point where you have had sales or clients. And so you could track, hey, did they come from Pinterest? Did they come from YouTube? Did people find me on email? How did they actually come and find my business? Where did I close the majority of the leads? That's a great other question, right? Where did I close most leads? Sorry for my writing, guys. It's terrible right now because not at the best angle, but We're going to get there. And so for us, for example, we just added texting. The last 2 years, we've been really, really big on that. So again, kind of thinking through some of that is really helpful. Now, in terms of practical like marketing things to track, you want to look at your traffic and traffic sources, right? So how are people finding your website? How are people finding your sales pages? How are people calling into your office if you have an office? All of that is really helpful. I also love tracking email list growth. So understanding like how are we growing our lead generation? Like email is of course super, super important, especially if you run an online business. So how are we growing that? You can also track your social media audience. So did you get more Instagram followers than last year? Did you get more YouTube subscribers? That's helpful to look at too. And then we also want to look at individual profit numbers. So for example, I want to look at monthly sales and profit. So for example, I want to look at how much money did we actually make in total sales minus expenses. So that is profit. And then total monthly sales is just the amount that you made in general before expenses, right? Essentially, profit is after expenses and monthly sales are just before expenses. What was that number? So for example, if I made $12,000 in January, but my expenses were $7,000, right? So that would be my amount of monthly sales. And then my profit would be 12,000 minus 7,000, which is 5,000. That would be my profit. So simple, straight to the point. All right. What else do we want to track? This is very personalized and individual. Again, I'm just giving you a lot of ideas for figuring out what worked and what didn't. For us, we might want to track sales from launches versus evergreen sales. And so for us, we like to track, okay, how much money did we make from our promotional efforts versus how many sales did we just generate based off our content, based off our website that didn't necessitate a specific push, right? A promotional push. And so that's helpful for us. All right. So once you have like essentially the metrics that you want to track, you could use this table that we prepared for you. Again, totally optional. If you want to do this separately in a spreadsheet, maybe it's easier for you to do that. That's great. But there is a space here where you can add all of this data. And so, for example, you could go in here and let's say that you're looking at specifically as we go down, let me just bring you guys down here. Okay. So we could look at, hey, the date range was January through December. We want to track website traffic. We know that we hit 22,000, visitors on that specific time period in that month. And then that same time frame, the previous year, we had 11,300. So we had an increase of almost double, right? Our website hits as an example. Now we can look at source and strategy and say, hey, this happened because we ran ads, for example, right? And then notes, we spend maybe like $3,000 as an example. So this is a really good place to like contrast what happened this year versus the year before. And you may not have all this data. That's okay. It's just a matter of putting one step in front of the other. The first year I did like the Prosper Plan process, which was 2016. I only had a handful of data sources and I didn't really have data from the previous year. So I just added what I thought was helpful. What you don't want to do is you don't want to just track random numbers and random data that doesn't actually mean anything for your business. So you really want to know that what you're adding here in this section is actually going to be stuff that you're going to use. It's going to help inform your strategy for the new year. Okay, so once we have this figured out, and this shouldn't be super painstaking, guys, please don't spend like 12 hours trying to figure this out. Dedicate a reasonable amount of time, maybe an hour or two max, to figure this out and break it out in chunks. You don't have to, have this like super, super long process. We want to make sure that it's sustainable for you to plan every year. And this can lead you down a rabbit hole. I want to make sure you're always putting guardrails and say, okay, how does this data matter? Does it make sense to invest time and energy finding these numbers? If so, like, awesome, let's do it. But if not, if it's just going to read random data, then don't waste your time. Make sure that you're being very specific. Hey, I want to find out, right? How much traffic are we actually generating? Because I want to see, is our email list growing? Is that traffic turning into clients and customers? And if it is, awesome, we're going to do exactly what we did this year and just double down on that strategy. But if it didn't work out, then I'm not going to spend time tracking it necessarily. Okay, now let's go into your personal growth plan. Oh, this is one of my favorite areas. And if you have gone through Prosper Plan course before, you know we have an entire training on how to create your growth plan. But really, we're just going to do some highlights here. And we want to really observe, like, hey, what are some areas that we want to work on this year? Okay, so one of the areas that I really want to focus on in terms of my personal growth is my health. I have been through the ringer with my health, you guys, the last 3 years. I'll update you guys on that now that I actually have answers. I feel like I can talk about it, but I basically have had horrible mold toxicity, and it's been just a whole thing. Haven't really slept consistently for the past 3 years. It's been horrible. So improving my sleep and getting out of chronic insomnia is going to be a huge, huge deal for my personal growth. And I know that's more on the health side, but I feel like for me, it impacts every aspect of my life. So I'm going to focus on that. I also want to make sure that I'm growing in the area of communication. You know, as we're growing our coaching practice, as we're really thinking about putting out more content this year. Last year was kind of a slower year for me in terms of content creation. I was recovering from my health, and we just needed to spend a lot more of our energy in the coaching aspect because we've launched a new coaching program. And so communication is a really big deal. I think that coming across in a more concise way, figuring out how to best communicate and get my point across is going to be massively helpful, not just for coaching, but also for content creation. Another area that I really want to improve this year is finance. I really want to understand, have a better grasp at investments and how we could leverage and maybe potentially, acquire, like get into the space of acquisition. How does that work? What does it look like? I've been thinking for a while, Chris and I have been like wanting to potentially acquire some online businesses. And so this is definitely a season potentially to do that. So you'll go down here and continue talking, looking at personal growth areas. What do you want to improve this year? It could be focus. It could be the way that you manage and handle pressure and stress. It could be, hey, I want to, really get back to reading 10 pages a day. I know for Chris, one of his big goals for this year is he wants to read 1 book a week. So these are all personal growth areas that you want to really improve. And then we want to go into the habits, right? We never want to just set intentions and resolutions and goals for the sake of doing that. We want to turn them into an actual plan. And when you create a plan for your goals, it means you need to support those plans with habits. So I'm going to go up here and say, okay, so if I want to improve my sleep, I need to set up a couple habits that will support those particular growth goals, right? And so for me, one of those could be setting up an alarm so that I can start getting ready for bed at 9 p.m. Maybe it also means doing red light therapy 3 times per week, and working out, getting back in the gym is really helpful. Now, obviously, you don't necessarily need 3 for each one of your kind of areas of growth. You don't need 3 habits to support that. Ideally, you would have 1 for each and then work on that. Like, for example, once I set up the alarm and I'm consistently going to sleep by 9 p.m., then I could layer on another habit that could be my red light therapy, right? You don't have to be like, I'm going to do this and this and this and this, because then it gets a little overwhelming, and usually it means you're going to quit before you even start making headway. Okay, the next one is communication. So I want to go through a communications course, and I also want to make it a point to watch at least 1 piece of content on the subject every single week. That's really helpful. Okay, so next with financing and learning about acquisitions, I want to read 5 books on acquisitions this year. And it could also be, I want to take a course, I want to find a mentor, I want to join membership or mastermind group. For me, I'm very, very new to this topic. So, and Chris has way more experience in this than I do. So I'm going to start like in the basics. And for me, reading is the way to go. And then I could layer on new habits and more advanced things as I go. So that is really awesome, really helpful to kind of go through. And then we want to move into the next section. What daily personal growth practice must you implement? And so for me, one thing that really is going to support all these things that I just talked about is making sure that I read and consume content on the topic. And when I say consume content, I'm very strategic. So for example, if I'm trying to learn about acquisitions or I'm trying to learn about communication, I'm going to look for podcasts. I'm going to look for memberships that I can join. I'm going to go through courses. And so consuming content strategically, not just like doom scrolling on Instagram or going mindlessly through my YouTube shorts. I got to be really specific on how I want to implement that daily practice. And so for me, it's going to be consume intentional content. And I can do that, right, by setting notifications from podcasts or YouTube channels on the topics of communication, as an example. But it can also be making sure that you are going through a course that you already purchased or consuming and being like involved in memberships that you're a part of, like the business launch, for example. So those are daily habits for me. Also, another thing I'm going to definitely do is I want to work out every day and I want to go through for a daily walk. Ideally, 2 walks, but for now, we're going to leave it daily and we're going to work our way up to that. So these are our daily practices, and then we're going to hold ourselves accountable. This accountability is so important, you guys. So we want to think about, okay, how can you set yourself accountable? And so sometimes you want to know like the kind of person that you are. For example, you could set up something like a rewards and consequences system. You can also get an accountability buddy. Like let's say you and your husband do your planning session together, and then you can say, hey, we're going to check in every Friday. And maybe you have like something cool like a pizza night, or you go out to a coffee shop or something kind of cool that you do. And you talk about, hey, where did you fall off this week? What did you do awesome? What are you going to reward yourself with? What did you stick to in terms of your daily habits that are building your personal growth plan? I think that's so powerful and so important. And if you're part of the business lounge, get yourself an accountability buddy. All you have to do is just post in the community and find someone in the program that also wants to really build an accountability system this year. And you guys could set it up really simply. One way that Chris and I hold each other accountable is like we'll text each other on Friday. Like, hi, how was the week? I've done this before with friends and coworkers, and it's such a good way of staying accountable and making sure you're following through. All right, the final step in our review is going to be finding the one thing. And so I love this concept by Gary Keller, who is the founder of Keller Williams, the largest real estate company in the world. And if you haven't read his book, The One Thing, I am going to strongly recommend that you do. It's absolutely awesome and has totally changed the way Chris and I think about business, the way we coach our clients. We read it a long time ago and it really was impactful. It's one of the books that I reread pretty consistently because it's that good. So his whole concept is, hey, you want to ask yourself, what is the one thing, right? The one thing that would make everything that you want to accomplish this year easier or unnecessary? I love this concept. And so Gary Keller says the one thing sits at the heart of success and is the starting point for achieving extraordinary results. And that's absolutely true. I think Pareto's principle is so important too, because, in the book, he talks about how 80% of our results come from 20% of our effort every single year. And so if we can think about the one thing that we need to focus on that's going to make everything else easier or unnecessary, it's such a liberating, empowering thing. So for example, if you didn't know what your one thing was last year because you didn't go through Prosper Plan, totally cool. You might want to start from scratch. But if you do know, so for us, like what was the one thing last year that made everything easier or unnecessary? And so for us, that was definitely building visibility. Visibility. That made everything else easier or unnecessary. Right? So you want to think about what could be your one thing this year. If you want to grow your sales, if you want to expand your coaching program, if you want more passive income, if you're trying to build a more work-life balance, what is the one thing that you could do this year that'll make all of that easier or just plain unnecessary? Like you don't have to deal with it. And so for us, I think one of the things that we're really, really, really going to think about is that one thing for this year. And for us, it's building platform and building exposure. And we've kind of been strategic about how we want to do that. But sometimes you don't know exactly how to get to that one thing. And so that's why having like an actual exercise might actually help you. So you want to start by looking at what worked and what didn't work last year. And for us, something like, for example, hey, what worked here was definitely serving our clients in bigger ways. So that was TBL Plus, our coaching program. Definitely getting ads rolling again was huge in terms of what worked. Launching our shop, that was awesome and definitely got us closer to our goals. And then I can go through, hey, what didn't work? So, launches kind of sucked last year. And we didn't really do full-blown launches, but we did hybrid ones and they were okay. They weren't great. I think I'm going to change our strategy completely around launches this year for that reason. Other things that didn't work were, for example, like too much client work. So this year, we're intentionally going to reduce our one-on-one coaching client seats to half and just only keep the clients who are actually the one-on-one clients who are really making amazing progress and are committed to the program and are easy and awesome to work with. Okay, so another thing that didn't work last year was having vendors that we couldn't necessarily trust. They were unreliable. And we had to do a bunch of migrations that sucked, especially at the beginning of the year. And I was like, no. So actually, we're going to release a whole series on the tools that we are using, the companies that we love working with and vet because our clients are having the same problem. And so we're going to be partnering with some of those companies that we love and bringing that content over to you guys on YouTube and the podcast because I just don't want to do this anymore. That's part of it. And I think it's a big enough conversation and pain point that we got to talk about it publicly. Okay, so we got that section done. Now we're going to talk about what we learned. Oh my gosh, so much. The importance of pivoting and being nimble. Last year was a really weird, chaotic year in the online space. And so being able to pivot and adapt quickly made a huge difference. I also really learned that there's a lot of power in simplicity. Chris and I are super ambitious and our team can tell you that. Like we're always starting new projects and doing new things. And it's like, bro, calm down, simplify. Because you can find yourself like we have, especially last year, with a lot of balls in the air. And it's like, no. We're juggling too much. Let's simplify. What else? We also learned that it is so important to double down on the things that, number one, God has revealed to you, and number two, that are foundational to your business. So we are like just in a season where we're so excited about content creation, especially long form, and just kind of following what God has put in our heart and like our gut feeling about where people are going and where trends are going. And we're just going to go super aggressively towards that this year. Because last year we had so many changes happening that it was a little hard to just do the things that we knew we needed to do in terms of setting ourselves up for the future. So we're just going to double down on the importance of long form content and then expanding and changing the relationship with our audience faster. We've had such an awesome, like, oh my gosh, this was huge, ascension models. Oh my gosh, that was amazing. Like last year was a year of ascension for our company in so many ways. And like, we just built these deep relationships with our audience. Like, I don't know how to explain it other than it was transformative in so many ways. It was beautiful. It's actually the reason why we're actually having a live event this year for the first time. And it's just so cool to build those deep, meaningful connections. So those were really important lessons for us. Okay, so one of the things, once you're done with this process, I want you to find your one thing. And so we've done the research. Why are we talking about what did we learn? Why are we talking about what worked and what didn't? That gives us clues as to what is our one thing in the new year. And so I love how Gary puts it. This is an actual graph from his book. And there's a big picture and a small focus. And the one thing kind of gets split into what is my one thing for the year and what is my one thing right now, right? So what is my one thing right now? And so what that basically means, let me just make it a little bigger for you guys so you can see. What that basically means here is that your one thing for the whole year might not necessarily be the one thing that you're working on right now, or sometimes it is. So I don't want to overcomplicate it, but usually you want to ask yourself a couple of questions, right? So here's some examples. What's one thing I can do to make us more competitive? What's the one thing I can do to make our product the best? What is one thing I can do to make us more profitable? What is one thing I can do to improve our customer experience? So what is my one thing? And your one thing could be, hey, we need more visibility. Like our one thing was last year. And one thing that we can do right now to make that happen is we can explode our YouTube channel, or we can learn how to run ads, right? One thing in terms of your big picture, and then the one thing that is your small focus that leads to that specific big picture vision. And so that's kind of how that works. And we can go through this whole exercise. We really don't have time, but he really explains how having big, broad, small, and specific one things is really important. So for example, here you could say, hey, what can I do to double sales? That is essentially going very broad. Whereas if you get a little bit more specific, we come here, what can I do to double sales in 6 months, right? That's the difference between being too broad and too general with your one thing and being specific. You could also go like a little bit too small, and you could be unspecific and just ask, what can I do to increase sales, right? Just to increase sales versus double sales. See the difference there in specificity? So you could also ask, hey, what can I do to increase sales by 5%? That's too small of a goal, right? It's not ambitious enough. So he talks about the art and the science, essentially, of finding the right one thing. But I don't want to overwhelm you with more information. This is just a bonus. And so if you want to do this exercise, you could absolutely try it and say, okay, hey, I want to increase my visibility, but I don't want to increase it just by 5%, like the small goal. I want to increase my visibility, and you can be more specific with it right here and say, hey, I want to increase, or even better, I want to double our visibility, and make sure that you know how to track that. What does visibility mean for your business? For our business, this essentially means two things. Number one, YouTube views, and number two, email subscribers, right? So we're very specific with that. We want to double our visibility by Q3. So that is a big, specific goal. You want to be essentially in this quadrant, not in this quadrant, right? Make sense? Okay, cool. We've quickly gone through this. I go way more in detail in the course, but for the sake of time, we're going to put it all together. So what's one thing I can do to, and this is insert your goal, right? So this could be double my visibility in insert a specific time frame, 6 months or by Q3. That's kind of how we would fill that out. And so now you can answer your focus question. What's my one thing that I can do right now, right, to double your visibility? And you could also extend that, which is awesome. So what's one thing you can do right now? So that could be, hey, learn how to grow a YouTube channel. Hey, learn how to explode on TikTok. Learn how to create better content. Learn how to grow an email list. That's just an example from my specific goal. You want to make it specific to you. But there's a little bonus section where you could talk and really set your one thing for all the different areas in your life. So what's one thing you could do to improve your spiritual life? Or what's the one thing to improve your spiritual life, to improve your relationships, to improve your health, to improve your finances, to improve your personal life? What does this mean? It means that we start narrowing down our focus. See, so often people set these random resolutions and these random goals that, number one, they never revisit. And number two, there's no clear plan of action. So I hope you're starting to see how this is actually building up that exact thing. Looking at your one thing, knowing what your focus is, it just feels better. It's easier to actually create a plan that will grow your business in the new year. Okay, so we finally figured out our one thing. We've gone through our personal growth plan. We've looked at the past year and reviewed it. Now it's time to set intentions and make them real. Now, I'm going to be really clear with this word here. Intentions are nothing if we don't have a plan. Goals are wonderful and so are resolutions, but they don't matter if we don't actually know how to follow through on them. So don't let that word trip you up. It's just there as essentially a way to describe the exercise. And so I want you to fast forward an entire year and I want you to think about, hey, what are some key highlights of your ideal year? Like what happened this year that was freaking amazing? So for example, you could write, hey, I'm feeling energized, satisfied, and grateful because all of my hard work has paid off in the form of doubling my income, but also I have plenty of peace. I'm in my genius zone. It could also be like finances are in order. I've tripled my revenue, paid off my student debt. I didn't think I had it in me, but I couldn't feel prouder that I went for it this year. Maybe it's I'm more connected to my family and friends than ever, and I'm taking care of myself emotionally, spiritually, and physically. I feel healthy and strong. So imagine that you are reverse engineering your ideal year. What would you write in this section? I think that's extremely powerful and amazing. Next, I want you to think about what would you try in your business if failure was not a possibility? What would you go for this year if you knew that you could not fail? That is a powerful question to ask, especially now at the beginning of the year. And so to answer this super, honestly, I would acquire a new business. I would also look into purchasing a couple investment properties. And these are like, big goals at this stage. Keep in mind, we've been doing this for over a decade. When I first started, my biggest thing was like, hey, I really want to go for it and see if I can actually hit my first 6 figures. And that was the biggest goal I ever had in my life. Like that, I could not see a future beyond that or anything bigger at that point. But I needed to go through the steps and through the journey that a lot of you are going through right now and never feel like you have to set the same goals and aspirations as I do or anyone else on the internet. You're on your own path and your own journey. Keep that in mind because I feel like it's easy to compare ourselves, especially when we're watching other people set their goals and intentions. Okay, so these are just some examples here. And then at the end of this new year, how do you want to feel? Because listen, you can accomplish all the things in the world, but if you're exhausted, burnt out, if your relationships have suffered, if you don't feel connected to the Lord, if you are, in a place of disappointment, or maybe you just have no joy or joyless, there's no point. There's no point in doing all of that and ending the year in a worse place emotionally and spiritually or physically than you are now. So I want you to really think about how do you want to feel as you wrap up the year. And so for me, this will be something like, I want to feel energized. I want to feel energized and connected to my family, to my familia. Family is really important for Chris and I, and we always want to make sure we're making time for the people that we love. We're connected. We are spending time, quality time together. I also want to feel healthy and vibrant. I don't want to be burnt out. I don't want to be exhausted. Maybe I want to also feel rested, right? As an example. This was not something, I failed at this last year. I did not feel rested at the end of the year. Oh my gosh, I was exhausted. And thank goodness for Christmas break, we took 2 weeks off, and it was glorious. It was amazing. Highly recommend if you can swing it. And so, you'll go on and talk about, hey, these are the ways that I want to end the year. I want to start the year with the end in mind so that I can reverse engineer the process. All right. Last thing we're going to talk about in this section, we're going to talk about setting boundaries. So important, guys. Please. So important. So I want you to really envision, think back on the past year. What are some of the things you've had to deal with, experience, or endure that you're just not willing to go through again? I think this is a question very few of us ask ourselves, but it's helpful and it's important as you reflect on the previous year. And so with that in mind, I want you to set up non-negotiables. What are your non-negotiables for this new year? So for me, for example, one of my non-negotiables is I am going to say yes only to the things that actually move the needle. Move the needle. As an example, right? And so for you, it might be something totally different. It might be actually saying no to distractions. It might be one of your non-negotiables might, be, hey, I'm going to take care of myself, right? I have an example here. Despite how hectic life gets, this year I'm taking care of my body by getting a massage every single month. It's a non-negotiable, right? You could also have a non-negotiable be a date night with your spouse. So, hey, it could be like, hey, non-negotiable date nights. No way, we're going without them. It could also be, I am not going to, let's say, travel for the holidays, which can be a little stressful, right? Sometimes we're just not in that season. Think about your business as well. Like, hey, I am not going to be okay with maybe like not marketing or not staying consistent with my content. I'm going to stay consistent. It's simply a non-negotiable not to do it, right? So figure out what your non-negotiables are. And I want you to think about the people in your life that might be affected by those new non-negotiables and have a conversation with them. I talk more about that in Prosper Plan course, so you can check that out. But I think it's important to share your non-negotiables, especially with your spouse, your team, etc. And you want to do it in a really tactful, loving way, especially if it involves them. Like, please don't go out there and start talking about non-negotiables to people when you don't actually have a plan. Okay, so be very wise and discerning for how you do that. All right, we're here. So for me, I always discuss my non-negotiables with Chris and with our team. And now for the glorious part, the most exciting one is big picture goals. Okay, so this is really important in terms of how you set these. Number one, I want you to be specific with your goals. So instead of just saying, I'm going to make X amount of money, I want you to say, I'm going to make X amount of money by this date, right? Be very specific with your goals. And you also want to break those goals down into very practical action steps. So in the previous video, if you hadn't watched earlier this month, Chris actually showed you how to set up quarterly rocks and how to break those into daily to-dos. So refer to that video afterwards, but I want you to just think about how you're going to be setting goals and how you're going to break those goals into attainable step-by-step process. So for example, here I have launch our first virtual event and enroll 100 founder students with a revenue milestone of $200,000. That's just an example, right? Not specific for me, but this is a way for us to get very specific, but also show you, hey, here are some of the action items. I'm going to launch an affiliate program, right? I'm going to go through new training on the latest virtual event technology. I'm going to train and onboard new team members who will help with the production, and I'm going to create an entire workshop to promote the virtual event. The reward is a spa day with my girlfriend. I love, love, love thinking about how you're going to reward yourself when you achieve a goal, not just set a random goal. So now you're going to go in and really look at big picture goals. You're going to set action items and a reward. Now, it's important to note, I don't recommend setting more than 5 goals at a time. There's a lot of science that backs this. There's a lot of research that I cite in the actual Prosper Plan where you could check out Gail Matthews and some of the research that she has done around goal setting and productivity. And I think it's fascinating, but essentially don't set more than 5 goals. It's pretty overwhelming to reach more than 5 goals. You can always replace those goals with new ones once you actually achieve them. Okay, next it's stretch goals. These are goals that are kind of out of the realm of possibility in a way. I want you to get your creative juices flowing. Think back to what you would accomplish, right? If it was impossible to fail, what are some ways in which you could stretch the goals that you have already set? And so, for example, if your goal here, number 1, was to get to $200,000 in revenue once you launch that live event, right? That's the revenue number. What would it look like if you stretched yourself to try to hit 300,000 or 400,000? That's where you could start brainstorming some of those stretch goals in this section. And now you are done, my friend. I told you we were going to talk about Gail Matthews, who's a psychology professor at Dominican University in California. And she completed this really fascinating study on goal setting. I think it's really interesting to look at some of this data, but she talks about how participants who wrote down their goals were 42% more likely to achieve them than those who did not. And she also found that telling a friend increased this rate by 78%. So having an accountability buddy, adding accountability layers, and having an accountability plan for your business is so important, and also for your personal goals. So I want you to actually go and find your tribe. If you haven't done so already, we have an amazing one inside the Business Lounge. You can find an accountability partner there, but also you're going to have a community where you can actually update people on goals that you're setting and the things that you're achieving. And it's fantastic to do it that way. But you can also bring in your friends, bring in your spouse, have an actual accountability plan. Because if not, you're going to find yourself boop, 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 back in January of next year with the exact same goals and intentions. And you're just going to go around in circles. We don't want that. Okay. So that's really, really important. All right. The last portion of this is a bonus. You don't have to complete this, but it is helpful. We do this every year, and that's looking at a SWOT analysis of our business. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Every year, it's important for us to look at this, especially because we're in a place where we're supporting a team. It's not just me anymore, right? It's Chris, it's me, it's Brian, it's Belle, and some of our subcontractors as well. We want to make sure that we're looking at how are we staying competitive? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What do we want to do better and different? What are some threats? These are just basic business principles, and it's super, super helpful to look at these. Now, you also want to find some key opportunities if you can. Again, this is all bonus stuff that I walk you through in terms of how do you pivot, especially in a weird year like we've had the past year. So we want to look at things like, hey, how can you diversify your business? Have more product development, meaning more offers. Let me see if I can bring this in a little bigger for you guys. But also here, how can you develop your market? How can you enter a different market, a bigger market penetration and product development, all of those really helpful if you are wanting to expand your business in the new year. Okay. And then the last part here is all about money and reverse engineering your revenue goals. How do you want to actually do that in a tangible way? So I have a couple examples here for you, and you'll see, for example, here, outlining your offers is a really good way to do that. So the first part could be just your revenue predictions. How much would you like to earn in the next 12 months? An example of that is $75,000 a year. Step 2, I want you to outline your offers. So let's say that you are a product-based business and you have a $59 signature product, a $149 signature product kit, and a subscription box for maybe $499. Maybe if you're service-based, you have workshops, masterminds, done for you services, personal brand, different kinds of business models. Examples here. Now, you want to outline those offers and then also add the pricing. So for us, for example, we have TBL. It's our signature program. That's $3,000. Then we have TBL Plus, which is our group coaching program. And that, depending on whether you're in this level, can range anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 a year. And then we have TBL coaching, which is our one-on-one program. And that is usually $18,000 to $50,000 a year, right? Those are our main 3 programs. Did not start there. Please understand that, guys. My first offer was like $29. So don't think that you have to have these big numbers. And these are not huge numbers. We have mentors who charge way more than this. So thinking of, okay, so now that you have your offers and you have pricing on them, how do you reverse engineer that process, right? How do you think about a breakdown of what that needs to look like? So if you set up your goal to be $75,000 a year, as an example, you want to make sure that you're breaking that down into different packages, different goals essentially for your month, for your quarter, and for your year. So if I zoom into here, you'll see we have this example. All right, so I know that $75,000 a year is $62,260 a month, $18,780 a quarter, or $75,000 a year. Now that I know that, I can then break it down and say, okay, cool. I know that I need to sell from my done for you service package about 5 units a year for $25,000. I need to sell about 10 to 11 units at $199 for my coaching group or my mastermind. And that's going to bring another $24,000. And I also want to sell my workshop, right, at $399 right here I need to sell about 66 units of that for approximately $26,000. And that gives me roughly that $75 mark. You want to do the same thing. Just pull out your calculator, figure out how much units you need to sell for each of your offers in order to hit those goals. And you are done, my friend. Now you're empowered with an entire goal setting system that will help you stay accountable, develop habits, create a growth plan, and will help you strategize how you're going to achieve them, break them down into very specific projects, into very specific to-dos, into very specific revenue goals. And of course, we have a bunch of great resources for you to continue your growth journey. So you could read The One Thing by Gary Keller. I love Your Best Year Ever by Michael Hyatt as well. And of course, if you're a member, here are all the courses that you can go through that will support your goal setting process, from the productivity clinic to the branding, pricing and positioning workshop, to designing profitable sales funnels, to the content calendar system, to writing sales pages that convert, to your profitable promotions course. All of this will support your growth as you continue to build out the most prosperous year yet. So hey, I hope that you enjoyed this Plan With Me session. All of the links to both the Prosper Plan template as well as the course are going to be below in the description box in this video. And of course, I'd love to hear from you. What is the number one thing? What is the one thing that you are focused on this year? Comment below and use this video as your launching pad for building some accountability layers like we talked about in the video and getting things done. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a big thumbs up. Let me know in the comment section. And of course, hey, if you want to see more videos, let me know about that too. And of course, subscribe to the channel because we have so much more in store for you in terms of really practical tutorials and different strategies and worksheets and workbooks to help you actually achieve more in this new year. I love you. I mean it. Bye for now.